What is up, my fantastic friends? Welcome back to the channel. I am the Crowlector, and on today's video, we're taking a look at the final two figures of the new Marvel Legends Fantastic Four First Steps movie wave. That's right, today it's all about these two lovely ladies. We're going to take a look at Sue Storm, aka the Invisible Woman, and Shala Bal. I think that's how you say her name, aka the Silver Surfer. First up, we'll finish out the four here, and we'll take a look at Sue first. As you can see, she looks very, very nice, just like she does on the packaging here. As you get a nice shot of Vanessa Kirby, looking fierce, as always. Of course, we get her lovely little outline hand there, the sort of phasing look. Marvel's Invisible Woman, with the lovely, really cool, kind of retro packaging for these guys with the retro Marvel Studios logo, the retro Hasbro logo. Nice Fantastic Four. I don't know about you guys, but it's always very nice kind of rubbing on the packaging when there's sort of this shiny embossing. Just very, very nice. It's sort of like a fidget toy or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird. And on the back with the rest of the four logos, we also get a little brief glimpse at her force field powers there. Here we have Sue Storm herself, the Invisible Woman, and she looks really, really good. I know a lot of people were a little bit concerned when she was first shown off that the likeness wasn't quite there, but I think overall it is really, really nice. Just like with Pedro Pascal, they really nailed the face printing. I do think Pedro is probably the best out of the wave. Then again, I'm not super familiar with Vanessa Kirby just yet, so this could look just like her. I have kind of noticed that she seems to have maybe a little bit more of like maybe a little bit skinnier, more pointed face in some parts. So I don't know if it's like 100%, but as far as I'm concerned, it looks very, very nice. With these face printings, you sometimes luck out, sometimes you don't, especially with slightly open mouth looks like this. Or maybe there's a little too much teeth, a little bit too little, whatever the case, or if the printing is off. But here, I think they did a really, really good job. Her blue eyes, just like Johnny's, very striking. Hers, I think, look a little bit more natural, a little better than his. I don't know if Vanessa Kirby has blue eyes in real life, but I think they did a better job here than they did with Johnny. Even on the hair, like with Johnny, you have a bit more of like a dirty blonde, whereas Sue is just more kind of straight blonde. And I do think they did a good job on sculpting the hair. As nice, kind of wavy. You have the nice, curl there, and the little ends kind of curl. It looks natural, looks good. I know a lot of times with hair pieces, depending on how it's sculpted, how it's painted, it can look kind of just like a big old blob. But this one looks appropriately hairy. Words I never thought I would use with Sue Storm. Of course, with hair being what it is on female figures, it does hinder the movement a little bit. It is a softer plastic, so you can move it, you can push it over a bit, but you can even hear it a little bit. That's not me farting, guys, I promise. It's just the hair catching. So, depending on how you have her posed, you might not get a whole lot. Like, it even kind of loosened the head a bit there. So just be a little careful. Because of that, you get a little teensy-weensy bit of downward movement, but like no upward movement at all because of the hair. Not a huge deal. She's posable enough elsewhere that you can still get her to look up, down, things like that. But it is something to be aware of. T-pose, of course, with the swivel hinge on the shoulder. Nice double elbows on both these guys. She can, hey, raise the roof. And then just like with the rest of the four, there's no cut at the glove or the boot. It looks like there should be, but there's not. But she does have your typical swivel hinge on the hands, except for her power-using hand. This one is just a regular old peg, It can, of course, swivel, but no forward, backward. Just like with the boys, she does have a sort of ball joint at the upper torso, and that's where you get a lot of the upward movement. If you want to look up, she may not look very natural elsewhere, very buxom. I guess she's looking with these eyes, not these eyes, if you know what I mean. You get a decent amount of movement. It certainly makes up for the lack of neck articulation. And then a joint at the lower waist. She can do the splits just like her friends. And with this one, just because of the crotch piece, putting the legs up, that's about as much as you can get them just going straight forward. As you can see with the curve in the crotch, it's weird to say, but you know what I mean. If you go straight forward, it kind of pushes it out. So she goes to the side a little bit more than the boys, but she does then swivel at the thigh, the nice double knee, and a swivel hinge on the leg. She's got pretty much everything you can need. And just like with the boys, a different uniform as well, a different costume. She kind of mixes Reed and Johnny's, whereas Johnny has a lot more of the white, Reed a lot more of the blue. She kind of has a nice balance of both. The white along the neck, like Johnny has, and then a lot more of the blue on the body, just like Reed has. The black and white on the gloves. And her belt piece is, of course, different than Johnny and Reed's, just because she is a woman. She has different proportions. And then, as well, her, like the design of her suit kind of mixes Johnny and Reed's as well, where you have the stripes on the top half, kind of like a solid on some of the bottom half, but still some of the lines and piping that Johnny has. It's a nice kind of mix of the two. My only real nit was that her power using hand, just like, you know, all the joints on these guys, as you can see, it's not so bad from the top where you have the white on white, but then on the bottom you have the black on white. So I did go ahead and fill in the white hole on her power using hand. I might go ahead and do the same on the gloves, not only for her, but for the boys as well, just to give a bit more of a uniform look. But it really does depend on how you have them displayed. Like with Johnny, you know, you don't have to worry about any of that because he's all red. Same with the Thing, he's the same color all the way through, so not a big deal. In addition to the power using hand, she does come with a fist if you want to just kind of use her without any sort of powers. Now, because of that, just like with the plain Johnny, it leaves her looking a little bit plain, but she does have what I think is a pretty cool energy effect, and it pegs in pretty well to her hands. Now, it is quite a large piece in the packaging. It's a much smaller piece there. It only kind of encompasses, it's like a little bubble around her hand. Whereas on this one, it's like a full piece. So if you have her hand just like straight out, it is going to cover up most of her, which I guess is kind of cool. Depending on how you look at it, it's sort of like, you know, she's using her phasing powers. But if you want to be able to see both her and the effect, you're going to need to turn her to the side there. Obviously, of course, looking straight on. It is a very big piece. I kind of wish maybe they included a smaller piece as well, just for like basic different sizes. I'm sure that's probably something you could borrow from another figure. I'll have to scour my extra accessories, see what we got. But the energy effect itself, you have obviously the peg that it pegs into, but a nice kind of uneven border. You do have these sculpted, what I assume are bullet holes on the front. They're all kind of raised. Same with on the back. You get more of like the bumps on the back, or I guess like the bullet is kind of coming through, which does make this feel, you know, a little scene specific. I don't know if she would have necessarily like bullet holes on her force field if she's fighting like Galactus or Silver Surfer, characters that don't use weapons. So that's a bit of a bummer. It would be nice to just get like a regular energy effect, plain nothing on it. Yeah, don't want to supersize it, don't want fries with that, nothing. Just a nice, good, classic energy effect. But I do appreciate the extra effort. Just like with the boys, she does have the communicator that is a separate piece. Although, unless I just misplaced it, I don't know if she comes with a swappable hand on this one. So you may not need to worry as much when if you are swapping out hands about losing this, but if you do, just be aware. Now, the one thing I am a little bummed they didn't include in any way, shape, or form is like a phasing hand or foot or something. I remember back on the old Fantastic Four figure, and really a lot of these Sue Storm figures, we get these little transparent bits that show off the invisible woman part of her power set, and we didn't get any of that here. To be fair, I've not seen the movie yet, so I don't know if she really does phase in and out that much, or if maybe that's something they're saving for the sequel. I'm sure there is a reason why they only gave us the energy effects. And I'm sure we will get some of those phasing hands in future figures on her. As the first MCU Invisible Woman figure, this nice, classic Sue. Sort of like I mentioned with the Human Torch, I just really like figures, action figures, and I think of them as like little art pieces. So it's always really cool to me when they do things like the transparent parts that show you all the inner workings and all the things that really go into making figures like this. So it would have been really cool, especially because on something like this, that in theory would be like clear. You'd probably be able to see all the inner workings a little bit better than the kind of murky red on Johnny. Again, I may, after seeing the movie, depending on how much she uses those powers, I may try and dig through some of my other figures, maybe if I do have any clear, transparent parts, see how they work on her. But as is, she looks really, really nice on her own. I'm very happy with her. And finally, we have what seems to be sort of the main antagonist of the movie, other than the ginormous Galactus, which they have not made into a figure just yet, but we have Shala Bal, the Silver Surfer herself. I gotta say, I'm excited to learn more about this version. Obviously, I remember the Nor and Rad version of the Silver Surfer from that first Fantastic Four, or I guess the second Fantastic Four movie back in the day, and I remember him from the comics and TV show. That's the one I grew up with, so I don't really know a whole lot about this version, which I'm excited to change because she looks very, very cool. Now, she was the one that I was expecting to kind of like the least out of the wave, just because of how simple she is relatively. I don't know just yet if I can definitively say, but she might actually be my favorite. Not only because of all the cool stuff she comes with, but just the amount of paint work that went into her posability. She's just such a fun, cool toy. And I'm so happy that we got her. I hope she's as cool in the movie. Putting her alongside the box, though, she does look appropriately surfery on the box, striking a cool pose there. She does not have a little, sorry about that, Shala. She does not have a little insignia like the other team members do. Would have been cool if they'd thrown in like a little Galactus symbol or given her like a surfboard, something just to kind of give her some uniformity with the rest of them. But as is, she's very much the outsider, so it makes sense. Accessory-wise, other than, of course, the board and that energy effect, she really only comes with these two extra hands. And these are probably the ones I'm going to be keeping on the figure versus the fists, just because while she's on the board, they really do add some cool surfery poses, a cool suggestion of momentum or balance, which I really like. And as you can already see, I guess I'll just go ahead and mention it now, one of the only real downsides to this figure is kind of the stability. Obviously, your mileage may vary because of either how tight your joints are or how you choose to display her, if you do use this added effect or not. I'm interested to see how well her joints hold up over time, because just like on the packaging, you're going to want to get her into some really cool poses. And while she can strike them, sometimes holding them is a bit of an issue. In the package, she came with, obviously, her surfboard, which is really, really cool. They could have just done a plain silver
surfboard,
but they actually decided to give us sculpted parts to it. I don't know if that plays a big part in the movie. On the packaging, it looks more just kind of like, I don't know, like a weathering versus like actual kind of damage-ish, which is kind of how this comes off. So I'm interested to see that in the movie, but it's really nice. And actually, that's kind of how I've been getting her to really like strike some poses. I'll show you guys later, but depending on how you put her with her feet in some of these grooves, it can actually hold the stability. So that's really, really nice. They didn't just paint these on, they actually sculpted them. You can actually see like a little bit of like kind of a coppery paint on those. So that's really cool. And then she came with this energy effect, which is sort of like her takeoff thing. Now I had expected it to, since these ones are going back, like sort of place the
surfboard,
well, I guess it would be like that, like she's kind of taken off, but you slide it in with the small part here, and it actually like notches into the stand like that. So it kind of looks like she's more exploding out of something at a bit of an angle, which is really cool. Obviously, you don't need to use that effect. You can just lay it flat, but it really does add a lot of height to, you know, a flying character and a lot of just overall coolness, a lot of badassery. Now, for the figure itself, especially when you get her under light, this figure really comes alive. I don't know how well you can see it. Excuse me as I thrust her bosom into your face, but she does have this really cool, like here especially, kind of coppery wash. It's not everywhere. It's just in some certain spots, like some more on the shoulders here, but it gives her this really cool sense of depth almost, that she's not just solid gray, solid silver. And then, of course, with moniker like the Silver Surfer, you would hope that you would be able to get her into all sorts of cool poses, and you most definitely can. Similar articulation as the other ones, but because she has a much more slight, slender body, none of the sweaters or bulky fabric parts, she gets a lot more movement or a lot more range. I do think she as well could have benefited from some butterfly hinges at the shoulders, but not a huge deal, I guess. Just have the typical swivel hinge, the upper bicep, double elbows, of course, and swivel hinges on all of her hands. The head itself, paint-wise, looks really, really nice. I do like that from afar you can't really see it, but when you get up close, you can see her eyes a little better. They're sort of like a bluish silver, and then there's a bit of a dark wash on her lips as well. That's really, really cool. Now, she has a very similar hairstyle to the Mystique figure that we got. I don't think it's exact. It's very, very similar, but they do have a little bit different, especially like in the bottom of the hair there. But because of that hair, it does affect the movement, unfortunately. She can look down a little bit in her judgy Silver Surfer ways. Looking up, you're not gonna have any luck in that regard. Unless you decapitate her, in which case then she can look wherever you want. But otherwise, it's pretty much just gonna be side to side. But then the nice torso joint. Now she does not have a waist joint like the other figures do. I think that could have been really nice, but at least we get, you know, nice 360 movement out of this upper torso. I'm seeing now even a little bit more of like the copper wash, which is really cool. She does have the same T crotch with the thigh cut, double knees, and then a foot that can go any which way you'd like. She does technically have less articulation than the other ones, but in terms of range, I think she has a lot more. You can really get her into all sorts of like cool, almost like Spider-Man-y poses. Like she really, because she has nothing blocking her way. Like, she really can strike some cool poses. The only downside to that, I think, is that depending on where you have her, maybe the temperature in the room, those joints might start to kind of weaken over time. I have had her topple off her board a couple times, especially as I try the more intricate poses. But that's kind of like what I said earlier. I usually have her with her right leg in the peg there, so she can kind of sit back. I find when I try and put her left foot on this one and kind of lean her forward, the weight kind of topples this forward. But if you just have the board lying flat, I don't think that'll really be a problem. It still kind of puts her forward, so you might want to just leave her looking back a bit. But that's kind of where the trick I mentioned earlier works, at least for me. With this one back here, you can kind of just rest her foot in those little grooves. Her toes don't match up exactly, but it's good enough. And because the board isn't just a flat, shiny, slick surface, it does give her a bit of leverage that she can kind of rest on there. But then, as you can see, even already, like, she's already kind of leaning. So if you want, if you can, I mean, if you get her into a pose you really like, you could try and stabilize her somehow, either with some, I wouldn't say glue, but some sticky tack or something. But just be aware, as you can see, she can break her ankles and just kind of fall off from the side there. So I'm sure there are people who are much more talented than I in terms of posing figures and getting them to keep those poses. This one especially can strike all sorts of cool poses. She really makes a cool centerpiece for the wave. And she's one that I find myself going back to, not only in terms of posing, but just like the overall detail on her. As you get her under the light, especially, she really shines, literally and figuratively. She is so cool. And I cannot wait to see what they do with her in the movie. The Silver Surfer was arguably maybe Shala, maybe my favorite part of Rise of the Silver Surfer back in the day. I love Doug Jones and what he does with his characters, so I'm excited to see what Julia Garner does with the character. I'm not as familiar with her work, but I've heard very good things, so I'm excited. But yeah, I think that'll about do it, guys. Not only for Sue and the Surfer, but also just for the wave in general. I would have to say this is probably one of the best waves we've gotten in a while from Legends, at least as far as the MCU waves go. There's really not a weak figure in the bunch. I do, again, think Johnny is maybe a little bit bare bones, but there are ways to spruce him up, as there are with the other ones as well. If you are a fan of the MCU, or especially the Fantastic Four, I do think these are crucial parts of your collection, and hopefully the movie lives up to these truly amazing, or should I say, fantastic figures. But if you've picked any of these guys up, let me know in the comments what you think. Which one's your favorite? Which one's your least favorite? Which one changed your mind in a pleasant way? Or, I guess, not so pleasant way? If you were the fifth member of the Fantastic Four, just for a day, what would you want your power set to be? Leave me a comment below with anything and everything you could ever want to talk about. I love hearing from you guys. And it really means a lot to see the feedback and the engagement with the video, so keep it up, guys. It really means a lot. And while you're down there, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel to be kept up to date on any new uploads I have. I will be back soon with more creepy Crowlection content, but in the meantime, don't forget, stay spooky.